Hi everyone and welcome back. Kyle here. Today's date is August 13th, 2024. Indexes did pretty well today. They had some economic news come out this morning. Wasn't anything significant, no major news, but it was just enough to kind of set the tone, set the mood for the day. And once the New York session opened up, participants just ran with it and had a pretty good run overall. We pumped on the S&P 500 a little bit over 1.5%. Just a fantastic day. So let me show you the charts here. Picking up from where we left off yesterday, these are some of my drawings that I kind of quickly laid out there in yesterday's video on where I thought somewhat of the range might be able to be expected from the upcoming move here. And I think that's going to come from the inflation rate numbers. Now the forecasted is only 0.1% lower than the previous. So I am hopeful that we're going to at least meet or beat those forecasted numbers. And with that, then that kind of sets the tone of, okay, the market is doing, or the economy, the larger economy is doing better. Inflation is coming down. Maybe the Federal Reserve can consider looking at lowering interest rates. I think that's kind of the narrative that we're looking for. As where if inflation goes the opposite direction, then with our somewhat tightening economy and our now slowly increasing unemployment rate, we don't want the narrative to be that interest rates are going to stay higher for even longer, right? They've already been higher for longer. We don't obviously want them to just remain at 5.25, 5.5% indefinitely. We do want them to come back down before too long. So hopefully this inflation rate numbers that we get in the morning is positive and bullish and allows us to continue this momentum upwards towards some of this overhead resistance around the 5560, 5600 area. So looking on a little bit more zoomed in time scale, I was expecting a little bit more kind of whiplashing going on, and we did get some of that, especially yesterday. There was a lot of zigzagging going on as it was kind of range bound, and then it picked up overnight and sold off on the European session overnight. And once we got that data this morning, we took it and ran with it. So I think we're going somewhat flat into the news that's coming out early tomorrow morning. Just waiting on that CPI news, and we will have to see how market participants react to that tomorrow. It could be a pretty significant move though, either way. Obviously, if it's bad news, then I think that starts to set the tone for possibly going back down towards these lows that we were at earlier. So, which would not be great. I mean, that's a pretty big move to the downside. I want to look at the Nikkei here and see how their index is doing, and they are doing pretty well. They've had just consistent back-to-back days of buying, and they are recovering from that pretty severe drop slowly but surely. And that drop isn't entirely from the market being overextended and there being, heavy bearish fundamentals in the first place. It was because of a number of other factors tied to their interest rates and how people are having money moved around to take advantage of that. Currencies were involved. Largely, I think I am kind of expecting the Nikkei to recover here pretty strongly, at least back to somewhat of these 39,000, 38,000 areas. I did want to note, though, that it is right at a fib level here, right at a 0.5 fib level, which it does have some possibility of a reversal from there. So you can't be too crazy about some of these indicators and technical analysis and whatnot. I mean, if you draw on a chart enough, eventually you will find a reason for it to go every which way, including nowhere. So you kind of just have to pick what you like to reference and have a calculated risk on it and manage that risk. That's the important part, because every strategy is going to have wins and losses. So moving on, we do have some news today in that the Chipotle CEO has moved over to Starbucks. We can see Starbucks reacted very positively to that. They are up over 25% for the day. And I want to note right here, what we're looking at right here, and if you've been listening in on previous videos, you know what that is. We are staring right at the 200-week moving average. It just came out of nowhere. Starbucks was trending way down below it. And once they had this very positive news, apparently the Chipotle CEO is a huge deal. Once we had this very positive news, it just snapped right up to that level. And it's staying below it for now, but maybe that momentum will continue in the coming days. They do have a dividend approaching, so that will be just a minor sell-off. But let's look at a larger time scale. They were not doing very great on a larger time scale pre this news. So I don't think just by changing your CEO overnight that's going to necessarily change the outcome of the company from here on out, right? Obviously, these types of changes and impacts take quarters, if not years, for real significant change and performance to take place. It's not going to just go all-time highs from here. It was already trending pretty downward, and it was approaching some lows that were established in mid-2022. And I think if it wasn't for the news of the CEO, then they would have just slipped right on down past that, and they would be testing possibly even the COVID lows. Now, I don't know too crazy much about Starbucks myself. I'm not a huge Starbucks fan. I would much rather be in a company like Dutch Brothers, something a little bit more up and rising, something that's going to potentially take market share away from Starbucks. I like to keep an eye on those newer players to the field, even though they are not doing particularly great recently either. Let's look at Chipotle though, and we can see how they responded to their CEO leaving, and it was not great. They immediately snapped down to prior lows that they had established early August. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their company is going to start doing bad either, right? Like, I think both companies are, if anything, inclined to continue performing exactly the same way as they have been performing. I'm sure Chipotle is well established with or without their CEO in a successful business model. Likewise, Starbucks, if they're in a suffering, declining business model, then it's going to take a lot of work to pull that out and recover that. Other stocks I wanted to look at here, one of them is Nvidia, of course, the very popular one. And the main thing I'm looking at on Nvidia was a potential buy level, and I think that was sub 100, and I did not end up getting in on it. I think I would like to see it just a smidge lower. Might have missed that opportunity entirely. Time will tell, but they are trending pretty strongly back upwards, and I don't think we have seen everything that there is to see from this company yet. I think they have many more cards up their sleeve, and I was hopeful for a pretty strong sell-off post their split. And if you go back in my videos, I do discuss that, how occasionally with these companies post-split, not guaranteed, but occasionally almost very closely to after they have that actual split date event, not the announcement, but the actual split date event, do they experience a pretty good sell-off. And although it was around kind of when the market was having a sell-off in general at the same time, Nvidia did exactly that. It came all the way down to almost negative 35%. Probably the opportunity to buy was in there, but I would like to get it just a little bit lower, maybe in the 80s, maybe in the high 70s. And if we don't get it, we don't get it. That's just the way it is. Another one I'm looking at here is Dell, and I did take a trade on Dell today. I think I was expecting to not want to take any trades prior to the CPI, but Dell is a company that has earnings approaching here towards the end of the month, And so I took a call contract expiring September 27th, and I put it on my Theta account here so you guys can see that as well. It does expire on the 27th. So it's a 100 strike, 927 expiry call. I got a single quantity. It cost me $9.40 for the contract. And what I would like to see, at least my goal with it here, is I would like to see it continue trending upwards a little bit towards its earnings date and then get out before that. So maybe I can harvest an extra 7, 8, 9, 10%. That'd be great. And if I can get out right before the earnings date, I think that is ideal. I got a little bit long just to give myself a little bit of buoyancy in between here and then if the market turns over and doesn't quite perform as well as I think it might. But yeah, so that's another trade that I wanted to throw on there, and I'm going to keep just populating this with different little trades that I end up taking and see if I can't create some pretty good trading history. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. I will see you all tomorrow.